What's going on, folks? It's Moejii, the king of the office, Moejii, baby. And I'm here to give you everything I know about why Benjen joined the Night's Watch. Yes, folks, Benjen Stark, the fourth son of Rickon Stark, joined the Night's Watch under mysterious circumstances after the events of the Tower of Joy. We want to know, and you want to know, what happened after that. I'll try to explain everything I know. I'll do a little bit of research, go through the books, go through a couple chapters, and see what I find, and I'll give you my theory on what I believe is the reason Benjen joined the Night's Watch. Alright, so there's circumstances, there's certainties, but what we do know is, at the Tourney of Harrenhall, when all of this started off, Benjen was a young man. He was there with his brothers and sisters at the invitation of Mad King Aerys and Rhaegar Targaryen at the Tourney of Harrenhall held by the Wents. This tournament brought all the lords and ladies across the realm to see this tournament. It's a magic affair. Lots and lots of things happen at this tournament. There's a lot of history and lore at this tournament, ladies and gentlemen. I suggest if you haven't read the books that you at least look up what the Tourney of Harrenhall is. Now, let's first talk about how Benjen is told to have joined the Night's Watch. The youngest child of Lord Rickard and Lyanna Stark, Benjen attended the Tourney of Harrenhall with his siblings Brandon, Eddard, and Lyanna. At the tournament, Lyanna rescued their father's vassal, Hallan Reed, from an attack by some young squires that were bullying him. Benjen offered Hallan a horse and some armor so he would challenge his attackers. During the feast, Lyanna was also teased by Benjen after she heard a beautiful song by Rhaegar Targaryen and cried. Prince Rhaegar got wine poured over him for this. He also listened to a black brother who tried to convince Benjen that joining the Night's Watch would be best for him, especially since he would not be heir to Winterfell, a plea that Benjen took to heart. Now, in the story, when we hear about crows that are tasked with recruiting new people around Westeros, we have been introduced to Euron. Euron is a crow recruiter. He's been doing it for 20-odd years, as he states to Arya when they are together leaving King's Landing at the start of the War of the Five Kings. Now, I believe that Euron was the crow that convinced Benjen to join the Night's Watch. If you see the way their camaraderie is in the beginning of Season 1, you could tell that Benjen has a lot of respect for him. It would seem correct if Euron was the man who convinced him to join. Now, the timeline's right. Euron has been doing it for 20 years. This is not some typical person that goes around Westeros getting recruits. Euron is a known and respected brother of the Night's Watch, and we aren't introduced to any other crow that does this task. It just seems right, ladies and gentlemen. During Robert's Rebellion, Benjen was the Stark in Winterfell, because as you should remember, there must always be a Stark in Winterfell. While Ned was off fighting, and Benjen and Rickon, their father, was called to King's Landing by the Mad King Aerys and roasted in their armor. But once Benjen's brother Eddard returned to Winterfell from the Tower of Joy at the end of the war, this is when Benjen finally decided that it was time to leave. Ned had a baby boy on the way, Robb Stark, so he also had an heir, and the line of Stark succession was resolved. Benjen finally joined the Night's Watch for reasons unknown. A skilled ranger, Benjen became first ranger in a short amount of time. He was considered the bane of the free folk by man's rayder. Now, I will get to the reasons that most people believe Benjen joined the Night's Watch. One widely accepted notion is he was charmed by the idea. The glory and fate of joining a Night's Watch member had some glory to it in the past and is well respected by northerners. Many northern houses send their third and fourth sons to join the Night's Watch. It still had glamour and vigor behind it in the north. To southerners, especially people from King's Landing, they look down on the Night's Watch. It's for rapers and thieves. But in the north, it still had a little pizzazz to it. Benjen being charmed by the idea at the Tourney of Harrenhall by Euron the Recruiter, in my opinion, and the other ideas that as a young lord, without the possibility of only getting a holdfast, this seemed like a better situation for him. Being told that he could be a first ranger probably also stepped up his intrigue. Alright, theory number 2 is that Benjen joined the Night's Watch because of something to do with Lyanna. When Rhaegar and Lyanna hooked up, it is believed that Benjen knew and saw her leaving the Tourney of Harrenhall, and after she was the Knight at the Laughing Tree, another theory that Lyanna was the Knight of the Laughing Tree. And once Rhaegar saw her defeat all her foes in the tournament, Rhaegar immediately fell in love and they stole away off into the woods and did their thing. Benjen is believed to have seen all of this transpire and kept it quiet. 8 months go by until the Tower of Joy from the moment they met each other at the Tourney of Harrenhall, and Benjen is clued in. And it's believed that Lyanna only told Benjen that she was going to marry Rhaegar. She was pregnant for this whole time with Jon Snow in that 8 or 9 months after the Tourney of Harrenhall. And because Benjen didn't tell Rickard Stark, and it ended up killing him, his father, and his older brother Benjen, the shame of Benjen keeping the secret of Lyanna and Rhaegar to himself was the reason he joined the Night's Watch. He brought dishonor to himself. He loved his sister Lyanna, but he just didn't have the courage to tell their father Rickard that Rhaegar stole away with her. He didn't steal her or rape her the way that Robert tried to tell everybody that that's what happened. It was more like they were two people that fell in love and didn't want anyone to know, and they ran away with each other. Benjen knew about all this because him and Lyanna were close. Their father ended up getting killed because he, went after Rhaegar, wanted to kill Rhaegar. He wanted to know where the hell his daughter was. All the stories that are being told, the gossip is Rhaegar raped her. So this ended up getting him killed, and because of this, Ned and Benjen came to the agreement that it would be best if Benjen joined the Night's Watch and took the secret to his grave that he knew about Lyanna and Rhaegar's marriage and their affair. Now, I totally believe that Benjen knew the R plus L equals J theory. This is one of the few people that knew about this other than Howland Reed. I believe that Ned had a problem here. He already had to silence Howland Reed. He's his lord, so Howland wouldn't be too much of a problem. And this is why you haven't seen Howland Reed in the story. It's because Howland Reed doesn't want to be introduced to anyone that may question him about the events of the Tower of Joy. Howland saw the baby Jon Snow come out of the hands of Lyanna Stark in her bed of blood, so he knew the whole rap. But Ned had to still tell everyone a major story, so he came up with the fact that Ben and him and Jon Snow would be his bastard. He would have to tell Benjen that he needed to keep quiet as well, and what better way than for Benjen to just join the Night's Watch, where he is out of reach of Robert, who could question him and call him a traitor for not telling him about Jon Snow. And this is the agreement. Benjen would join the Night's Watch and not hurt his brother Ned by anyone getting to him and hurting Ned. So, alright, and now drum roll please. The number one reason I believe Benjen Stark joined the Night's Watch is I believe he is a warg. Now there's some things in this puzzle that took me a while to figure out, but I believe George R.R. Martin leaves as much clues as you can find. Now let's look at one of the few wargs we have in this story, specifically a Stark. Bran. Bran was never going to be heir to Winterfell. He was the third child of Eddard Stark. Benjen, never going to be heir to Winterfell, was the third child of the Lord of Winterfell, Rickard Stark. Bran's powers awoke when he got thrown from the tower by Jaime, which supposedly awakened his powers that he already had in him. I believe Benjen's powers awoke when he went to the wall and the Night's Watch. Melisandre states that her powers grew tremendously when she was in and around the wall because of its magical powers. I believe this is what happened to Benjen. Once he got to Castle Black, his powers awoke. And I believe this is why he rose through the ranks and became first ranger at such a young age. You can imagine him hunting and taking care of business in the haunted forest, and powers of the old gods just helping in his favor. I want to look at one other thing I believe Bran and Benjen have in common. Benjen has been presumed missing since the middle part of the first book of Game of Thrones. Same thing on the show, since the first season he's gone missing. Bran is presumed missing and or dead once Winterfell is sacked by Theon on the show and by Reek/Ramsay in the book. People assume that Bran is dead, so people also assume Benjen is dead. I believe this is for a reason. I believe George R.R. meant this as a reason and or a clue. There are certain things that aren't just gonna be left mysterious for no reason. Benjen is coming back in the show for a reason, and Bran has come back and been found by the Reeds. They are also mysterious and have magical powers from the old gods, especially Jojen, who's a green seer. Now, I want to move on to Cold Hands. D&D have already merged Benjen and Cold Hands on the show because it feels right. I know George R. R. Martin told his producers on the book that Benjen and Cold Hands aren't the same person, but any logical person that reads the book will assume that he is. Cold Hands is presumed to be a man of the Night's Watch. He wears black garb. Cold Hands helped Sam get past and through the wall and back to Castle Black, and he then helps Bran, Mira, and Jojen get to the Three-Eyed Raven. Cold Hands also kills the mutineers at Craster's Keep because that's the reason it's assumed he's a man of the Night's Watch. He also calls Sam brother, a terminology only used by the men of the Night's Watch. On the show, Benjen and Cold Hands are merged, and Benjen's the one also helping Bran get back across the wall now in Season 6. Benjen Cold Hands comes back to life. He states that the children of the forest saved him when the White Walkers descended on him and his other rangers when they were trekking early on in Season 1 and in the first book. Supposedly the blood of the first men runs through his veins as they do Bran, and the magic kept him alive instead of turning him into a white. I believe the magic kept him alive as well because he's a warg. I believe he may have warged into an animal when he was attacked by the White Walkers and was able to warg back in when the children of the forest showed up and helped them. This is why his body kept intact. So the next question is, so where's Benjen been this whole time? Why did he disappear from the story? Well, I believe I figured out the crafty tale George R. R. Martin has woven. I believe when Benjen supposedly left to go on his ranging expedition, that searching out the wildlings that joined Mance Raider's camp was just the cover story. I believe Benjen was getting strong green dreams, and it was from Bloodraven telling him to come beyond the wall. Bloodraven needed a guide to help Bran make it all the way above and past the wall to him in the cave. What better person than a Stark, a man of the Night's Watch, a blood relative to Bran, and one who also was a warg. This is what I believe all entails and what will happen to Benjen in the future. pay attention. You have to understand as well that being a warg is not always a good thing. This is something that Benjen would have had to hide from his brothers and sisters for a long while. I believe the best resolution he came up with was joining the Night's Watch. And going there and having his powers become more enhanced because of the wall was just a bonus. Being a warg in the north is a rare thing and it's looked on curiously. They respect the old gods, but it's not something he would have been able to worship out in the open. He wouldn't have just been able to do his thing as a warg in Winterfell. Yes, folks, and that's what it is. I hope I brought you everything I know and everything I could. Benjen is a warg, and when he comes back into the story, I believe in a Winds of Winter in the next book, we'll get to know the full details. Next season on season 7, I believe we'll get a taste of the magical abilities that Benjen possesses. These aren't gonna be normal magic tricks, this is gonna be Children of the Forest old god ways. And the best way for it to happen is through another warg. I believe Benjen will teach Bran a little bit more things that the three-eyed raven couldn't, folks. And that's what it is. It's the King of the North, and I'm out. Please like, please subscribe, and I'll see you on the next one.